Welcome to the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Perda. As a marriage coach who's married with 3 kids, I know how much parenthood could change a marriage. If flirting, laughing, and having fun together feels like a thing of the past, then I'm here to teach you that marriage doesn't have to feel so hard with your parents, and your marriage can thrive even when you're in the season of raising kids. Whether you're in a good place in your marriage and you just want to continue growing together, or you're wondering if you even like your spouse anymore, this podcast has something for you. Join me here each week as we dive into what it takes to help your marriage grow and maybe even do a 180. You'll learn ways to handle conflict better, bring that spark back into your relationship, as well as learn how to improve other areas of your life from my lovely guest experts. Are you ready for the next stage of your life in marriage? Let's dive in. Hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Marriage and Motherhood podcast. If you're watching this video, I'm in my car again. Haven't moved yet, but at least I've seen my house now, so that's something new. Yay. And today I am super excited about the guest who is joining me today. I have Alexis here. She is a parent coach out in North Carolina, so super close to where I'm moving to, so I'm excited. Anyway, she is a certified parent coach with her master's in clinical mental health counseling, and she works with overwhelmed moms who want to yell less and find joy in motherhood again. And let me tell you, when I first became a stepmom, because that was my introduction into parenthood, I had no idea the level of anger that can come out of me and how often I would feel triggered. And it kind of just like brought me back to the times where I'm like, gosh, why does my mom yell so much? Why is she so angry all the time and stressed all the time? And then in that moment, I was like, I get it now. I get it. So anyway, today we're going to go into mom rage, which I've heard a lot of you talk about how much you can relate to that, because I do have another episode that I briefly covered mom rage, but I thought it'd be so powerful to have Alexis come on here, someone who's a parenting coach, to go into more of what the hell mom rage is and what we can do about it. So welcome, Alexis. Thank you so much for joining me here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation and get the taboo out and open that we all have anger.
Yes, because I feel like we judge ourselves when we like flip out and we get into like this, almost like this momster version of us, right?
Yes.
And so I'm hoping that through this conversation, we're going to really normalize how normal it is, but also that we can do stuff about it. It isn't just like, well, this is just how we are and this is just how it's going to be.
Yeah, I love what you just said, because I think for a lot of us, there's a lot of shame tied
Absolutely.
into it. And then we just assume that there's something wrong with us and that it's not fixable and that there's nothing we can do. And that some of us just kind of go into that deep, dark hole of like, we are a monster, and we're terrified of then feeling anger again, of seeing that monster version of ourselves. So
Absolutely.
It's really difficult.
Yeah. And I really feel like the only thing wrong with us is that we weren't informed earlier. That's the only thing.
Yeah. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of the stuff that I talk to with my clients about now is really understanding generational patterns and how emotions were when they were growing up. And for a lot of us, anger was a very scary emotion. To watch our parents have anger. Anger was very suppressed in us as children. Probably a lot of parents didn't have the tools to deal with angry children, or think that it's just a wrong or bad emotion. And so now we're learning a lot more information that like, no, anger is healthy. There is a lot of safe ways to express our anger, and our children get angry very often, especially little toddlers. And so we're trying to manage all of this for the first time when becoming parents. And it is really, really hard when we don't have any sort of modeling skills of what that looks like.
Totally agree. So before we get into it, can you share with us how old your kids are?
Yeah. So I have a 7-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old son, and a 22-month-old daughter. So I have a pretty nice age range. I feel like I've gotten to like the peak of parenthood where like it seems like it's getting a little easier. Like I finally feel like, oh, I think I understand this parenting thing. It's
Oh my
only
gosh,
taken
go
me
find some
7,
wood and
almost
knock
8
on it.
years. Right, I
Go
know,
knock on
right?
some
Oh
wood right
gosh. I should.
now. I feel like every time I've had one of those moments where I was like, oh, I really feel like we're in flow here. We know what
Yeah.
we're doing. And then life just like has a way of knocking you, like, you don't know shit.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And my oldest is neurodivergent. She just got diagnosed with autism. So we have many flows of like, wow, okay, I feel like I understand what's happening. I know how to help you. And then we'll have months where I'm just like, oh my God, what is my life?
Yes,
So,
yes,
yes.
totally get that. Totally
Yeah.
get that. Okay, so what led you to want to specialize in helping parents?
Yeah. So great question. So I actually got licensed as a clinical mental health counselor before I had children. I was actually pregnant with my oldest when I finished all the training and my licensure. And when I had her, I was like, I am golden. I'm going to be the most perfect mom because I have the best background, right? I'm like, I know how to, feelings are good. All feelings are valid. I got this. Like, I knew exactly how I was going to parent. I knew all the things I wasn't going to do, and I knew all the things I was going to do. And obviously, parenting hit me right in the face and was like, you don't know shit.
Uh-huh.
So I spend a lot of time. So I was a stay-at-home mom. I decided after I had my baby and she was 6 months old, I decided that I wanted to stay home with her. And so I put my licensure to the side and I took up parenting as like my full-time job. And I think what happened is I really dug into all my perfectionist tendencies and I treated parenting obviously as like the most important job in the world, but I really based my worth as a mom on my child.
Mhm.
And so at this point I was looking for all types of parenting. Like I wanted to find the type of parent that I was and I wanted to label it. And I think there's a lot of moms out there that are, we find gentle parenting and conscious parenting and positive parenting and then there's some parents that are like, I don't know what I'm doing, but like, I'll do anything to make them behave. Like, and so I really, really connected with gentle parenting at the time. And I found Janet Lansbury books. I don't know if you've heard of her,
Yeah,
but
yes,
I love her. She's more like considered, I think, respectful parenting.
yes.
Um, but I kind of lump her in with that gentle parenting world. And I think for me, I found all these wonderful resources and scripts to follow and things to say to your children to help them with their feelings. And then I found myself in the moment losing it. I would get so angry, so frustrated. Either why isn't this script working? Like in my head, I hadn't figured out the connection between like the emotion being okay, but I still
Uh-huh.
wanted it to stop. I felt so uncomfortable. And I just thought like, oh, my child is never going to have to deal with like mental illness. Like I just had all these visions that just did not match up with reality. And so this led me down years, and especially having my first child being neurodiverse, a lot of the traditional parenting stuff doesn't always work.
Okay.
And it's really hard to read a book or listen to a podcast and try to tailor that to your family, like, and try to figure out what's going to work for your family. And so for years, I spent trying this. I feel like this is a really long answer to this question. I just
No,
realized.
I love it.
But I feel like I spent years devouring every book I could find, listening to every podcast, following all the social media accounts, and still feeling like I was the worst mom in the world. Why couldn't I manage my emotions? Why couldn't I help my child, calm down? Um, and I finally came across the Giant Institute for Parenting. Actually, that's who I did my certification through. And it was really about focusing on yourself as the parent and uncovering all of your patterns, your triggers, teaching parents how to emotionally regulate. And so when I saw all of this and I started putting all of this stuff to practice in my own family, our family literally changed in a matter of a few months because I finally had the tools and I had been practicing how to regulate myself. I understood why I was getting angry. I understood why these triggers were happening. And I no longer sat in so much shame. And so from this, I was like, this is what I've been looking for. Like, this is the parenting tool that everybody needs. Like, stop buying the book or the 50 million books that are half read on your nightstand of like how to help your child. Like,
Hmm.
it's parent coaching. And it's, we put so much pressure on moms, I think, to have it all figured out, but um, not reach out for personalized support. And so I think it's just such a valuable thing that we can offer moms, and something that I had definitely looked for years, but I had never even heard of a parent coach until I came across this certification program.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's one thing to like give people advice, but if you don't know how to apply it, and if if all the variables are not the same, it's really hard to
Yeah.
know what to do, when to do it, especially when you haven't learned to understand your own nervous system, how to regulate it, and understand your emotions and what
Yeah.
it's telling you about how
Yeah.
you're experiencing it. You're going to throw everything you know out the window, right? Because
Yeah.
application is way different than just information.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck, because I love that you bring up the nervous system, because that's a huge piece of what I walk through my clients and we work through. And it's all like unconscious physiological responses. You literally do
Yes.
not have any control. It's your body just trying to find safety. And we don't understand that about ourselves. And so we have these like blackout mom rage moments. And then afterwards, we're sitting in so much guilt and shame because we have no idea where it's coming from, because most of it we don't have control over. And until you can kind of bring all of that like to conscious thinking, um, and kind of dissect that all, then we can kind of create new patterns from there. And you can move away from that blackout mom rage that is not fun to experience.
Seriously. No, it's not fun. And when you are not aware that there are things that can be done to slow it down, prevent it,
Yeah.
or even pivot away from it after you've like noticed that, oh, I'm entering into
Yeah.
that cycle, it's really hard to just be like, oh, there I go again. Oh, there I go again. Oh, there I go again. And it's like when you don't have those tools, it does feel like you are helpless and that you are this
Yes.
like I don't even know, like this version of yourself that you hate, which is really sad, right? Because that's like the
Mhm.
last thing we should feel towards ourselves. And
Yeah.
anger is a perfectly healthy emotion. It's just a matter of knowing how to express it and knowing how to process it. That is the
Mhm.
missing link. So let's
Yeah.
dive into what mom rage is, because I know that this term is like, thrown around, but
Mhm.
I don't think people fully understand what the hell's going on. They just think, oh, well, I got pissed off. And so, it's really easy to justify why you got to that point. But let's peel back the
Yeah.
layers and talk about what is actually going on within us when we are experiencing these moments of mom rage.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we know that anger is one of our six primal emotions. And for many of us, like I said earlier, it is an emotion that has usually not had a great experience from the very beginning of our childhood. And so a lot of those messages are instilled in us that anger it can be scary, it can be not safe. It can cause disconnection between you and your caregiver, from an attachment standpoint. And so it's really difficult to then witness your child in anger, because then there's just a lot of unconscious thoughts coming up for you. There's a lot of fear and anxiety that is attached to mom rage. And it's these beliefs that we kind of carry either about ourselves or our child that is going on maybe during those moments of anger. But really it comes down to a part of where there's just so many expectations, and there's such a big mental load for moms to take it on, to be it all, to be super mom, and to have it all together. And our feelings and our needs really get pushed aside, especially once we become moms. And I personally think, because there is this push for gentle parenting, but there's not enough information on how to be gentle with yourself, is that we are constantly empathizing with our children. We are told that we need to empathize all day long with our children. And when you have no capacity to empathize with yourself, you are just constantly emptying yourself. And so when your needs are not being met, when you're not able to slow down and check in with what you are feeling in the moment and acknowledge that your feelings are just as important, it's like this perfect recipe for mom rage and just snapping it because you have had enough. Um, so yeah, does that make
Oh,
sense? Like, does that
absolutely.
resonate
Yeah.
with you? Yeah.
100% it makes sense because like I always say we should come first,
Yeah.
right? Like it seems counterintuitive because it's like, okay, well,
I
I just yelled
know.
at you and now we're being told, hey, we need to apologize, we need to make it
Mhm.
right. But are you
Yeah.
addressing what pushed you over the edge in the first place? Was
Yes.
there a lack of awareness on your part? Because I do feel like with previous generations, and we're kind of getting out of it,
Yeah.
but we don't make space to check in with ourselves.
Yes.
Most of us don't even know how we're feeling in any given moment. We're just like, go, 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 go. What's the next thing to do?
Yeah.
I just know I'm off, right? And
Yeah.
when you don't have that level of practice with emotional intelligence or
Mhm.
awareness, you might use very basic terms to describe how you feel. Like, I
Mhm.
feel bad. I feel good. I feel happy. I feel sad. I feel angry. But there's so much
Yeah.
more out there. And when we
Yeah.
don't take the time to figure out what am I feeling? How is this experienced in my body?
Mhm.
Then we kind of feel like we are just helpless creatures that get triggered and then we go into this like
Yeah.
mood and and our kids are just there to suffer our wrath. It's like that's not really what's going on though. And we
Yeah.
really have to like spend more time looking at ourselves in the mirror and be like, how did I contribute to me being capable of being pushed over the edge from this one
Yeah.
action that our child
Yeah.
did, which most likely wasn't on purpose,
No,
like,
exactly.
so I do agree with you that, yes, empathize with your kids because yeah, you should take responsibility over your own actions and your emotions, but also can you empathize with yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I have two thoughts from what you said is like one of the biggest things that I teach my clients is self-forgiveness. And I
Mm-hmm.
have like 4 steps that I can walk moms with of how to do that. And it is the key here is that you have to apologize and forgive yourself before you repair with your child. And because if you are filled with shame and you are expecting your child to forgive you so that you can let go of the shame, not only one, are they going to feel that it's not as authentic as it could be, but then we're placing our emotions on our child and requiring them to almost make us feel better for
Mm-hmm.
our outburst. So self-forgiveness is so important, of forgiving yourself and being able to reflect. I love what you said, like being able to understand, like, wow, why was that a trigger for me? And slowing down, like, what was happening in that moment? Like, and, perfect examples, I have moms who are like, bedtime is one of the hardest moments. And right before you close the door, you just like yell at your kid to like stay in their bed because they've come out a million times. And it's like, okay, let's slow down and like, what was going on for you in that moment? Like, what is your body feeling? Like, were you tense? Like, were you gripping your hands? Were you not breathing? And then, like, what are you feeling? You're probably exhausted and you're maybe hungry. Maybe you haven't eaten dinner yet. I don't know what your schedule is like. And so, giving your, like, acknowledging that, like, okay, there's a reason why this happened. What can I do next time to be more proactive so that this is not such a big trigger? Maybe I need to eat food before I do bedtime, or maybe I need to take some really deep breaths and ground myself before I start the bedtime routine. And then you're giving yourself actionable steps before, for the next time that this typical, because a lot of times we do kind of get triggered by the same things and we don't really realize that until we can kind of start tracking those triggers, and we're like, oh yeah, there are certain times of the day where I know I'm going to lose it. And
Yes.
until we can slow down and reflect on that, we may just think like, I have no idea why that happened, but there probably is a very good reason why that's happening and why it keeps repeating itself.
Yeah,
um,
I mean, it's really important to control the controllables, but until we slow down, we won't notice what is controllable. Like you said, like we're generally getting upset over the same things all of the time. So,
Mhm.
what do they say about insanity, right? Like it's you doing the same
Yes.
thing and expecting different results. But
Yeah.
if you're not
Yeah.
adjusting to almost like increase your capacity of being able to handle it, then you're going
Yes.
to flip out every single time and maybe even gradually get, you know, your patience would grow even thinner because you're not addressing the root issue. And yeah, it's annoying when your kids come out of bed. I get it. But I know
Yeah.
that when I take care of myself, I can handle it longer. I can handle it with more calmness, with more
Yeah.
compassion, and with more creativity with like getting them back into bed and staying in
Yeah.
bed. But when I'm not taking care of myself, let's say I'm low on sleep, let's say like I cannot wait to just have time by myself because I haven't given myself my own time and
Mhm.
filled my own cup, then when they come out, I'm like, get back in bed, stay in
Yeah.
there, stop. Like it's a very different response.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're describing. So what you're describing, I don't know if you've heard of it before. It's called the window of tolerance.
Yes.
And it's, yep, it's that capacity. And what's really great is once we learn, like, okay, I can stretch this capacity.
Mm-hmm.
And the same thing where you're saying, like, we can keep doing the same thing and it's just insanity, is we can practice these new skills. And it is practice. Every time we practice sitting with a uncomfortable emotion, or every time we use practice self-forgiveness, it becomes more of a habit, and it's going to be easier to do than just yelling at your child, and then going into that shame cycle. But it's practice. You do it over and over again, and you're going to keep messing up because parenting children is very, very hard. um, but it's that clunky practice that makes it so much easier every time you do it.
Yeah, and it becomes more natural too, because it at first it does feel awkward, like this is not
Yeah.
what I normally do, but
Yeah.
that's with everything new, right? It
Yeah.
becomes more normal. It's like when you get a new job and you're getting used to driving to that one place, over time you can go almost feel like autopilot. How did I get here?
Yeah.
Um, so what's been your experience with mom rage?
Yeah. So I think for me, it was very similar to that cycle I described of just kind of, I had this idea of how I wanted to be as a parent, and I was going to empathize with my child, and their crying and screaming or tantrum would finish and we would connect. And I just took my job as a stay-at-home mom very, very seriously and felt like I was responsible for how they reacted in situations.
Mm,
And so that's like, I think, a very personal thing of those were my fears and beliefs coming in of like, depending on how many tantrums my child had that day, related to how good of a mother I was. And
yeah.
those were very particular beliefs that I had. Every mom might be different of what, fear and anxiety comes up for them. And that's what I love about parent coaching is we can really go into what does that look like for you? Because, every all of us could have experiences of mom rage, but all of us might have very different reasons why it pops
Yes.
up for us. Um, and I think too, like I just had no idea how to deal with my own emotions. And so I was constantly pushing any negative emotion down. I had no capacity to deal with it. I had no connection to my body. Like if somebody were to ask me, like, where do you feel anger? Where do you feel
Hmm.
grief? Where do you feel happiness? I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about?
Yes.
um, like I just we're just so disconnected to our body, and I think it's really normal. Because
It
again,
seems
we are
more
not
mental
adults.
before you
Yeah.
learn, right? It seems like it's a mental
Yes.
thing. It's like, well, of
Yeah.
course I'm angry. They just threw spaghetti all over the walls and now I have to clean it up. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, but if this
Yeah.
were to happen to you in a different circumstance at a
Mhm.
different time, you might not have experienced it to that level, or maybe you haven't experienced it at
Yeah.
all. And we all have different things, right? Like something
Yes.
you're not okay with, I could be perfectly fine with. So
Oh,
there's got to be, there's something to it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, I think I have a little bit of a different experience because I have my oldest who is neurodivergent, and a lot of
Absolutely.
typical parenting strategies just don't work. And it really, really is about slowing down a lot more talking a lot less, which I didn't realize until a lot later on in my parenting, was like I didn't need to fix what was happening, but I found myself going into fight or flight, reactions whenever my child was having like a tantrum or a meltdown. And so I would go into this fight or flight. I had no idea what was happening. I just felt so uncomfortable in my body until I eventually would just lose it.
Mm-hmm.
Being rough with my child when I'm getting them in their car seats, slamming doors, slamming cabinets, like
Yeah.
just feeling like I had all this excess energy that I had to get out. And it felt really scary and uncontrollable. That feeling of shame of just thinking like I just don't deserve to be a mom. um and so I think it's really hard when you get stuck in that place, because there's not a lot of room for growth when you're so stuck in shame. And so it's just kind of making empty promises to myself every night I would go to bed, and saying tomorrow I wasn't going to yell, and I wasn't going to be rough, and I wasn't going to do XYZ, and I would be good for a little bit, and then eventually I would lose it again. And
Yeah, and
so
that
it was
kind
that
of thing
cycle
is
continued for a really, really long time until I decided.
and that kind of thing is hard to admit to some people. So it can feel
Really.
like it's like, who can I confide in and admit these things to? Like that I lost it so much that I
Yeah.
was a little rougher with my kid. And if you're out there and you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's me right now, like know that you are still a good mom
Mm-hmm.
and that you just need support. You
Yeah.
just need support because you are having a hard
Yeah.
time. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest things with mom rage is it's so taboo. Moms are supposed to be nurturing and loving and kind 100% of the time. And when there's any part of us that shows that anger, that resentment, that frustration, we automatically want to hide those parts away because it doesn't feel safe to share that with people because there's so much fear of judgment or what are others going to think. And so it can be really easy to keep that all to ourselves. And it makes it really hard to ask for help and get support and just not feel so alone. Thankfully, I felt very safe with my husband. We have really worked really well on our communication skills, which I know is something you really work with your clients, of feeling comfortable sharing really vulnerable things and not worrying that your partner is going to judge you when you're already in such a vulnerable place. And so finding support with your partner or with a close friend. And if you don't have that, seeing if you can reach out and get yourself a parent coach or some sort of coach that can help you process those vulnerable feelings, because it is really scary. And when you get that low, I think you really do need to reach out for some sort of help or support.
Absolutely. Finding someone that you trust will accept what you're saying without judgment and be there for you is key.
Yes.
Because with this kind of thing, when you are struggling, if you don't talk about it, it gets worse, right? It's kind of like
Yes.
if you keep
Yes.
it in the dark, it's going to stay in the dark and it's become this ugly, deep, dark secret that you have. And the thing about
Yeah.
vulnerability is when you talk about things, it lessens the shame. It lessens
Absolutely.
the heaviness that you feel
Yeah.
around it because then there's actually something that you can do about it. You can get the support emotionally, you can get the
Mhm.
support through tools. So I highly recommend reaching out to Alexis or your preferred parent coach if
Yeah.
this is something that you are currently experiencing, because you deserve to feel like the kind of mom that you want to be. But
Yes.
with that said, I love what you said, Alexis, that like society expects us to feel like we're on our A game 100% of the time. But if you're being honest with yourself, you're not 100% in a good mood. Your
Yeah.
life isn't 100% rainbows and butterflies. There's challenges that we encounter every single day,
Yeah.
multiple times a day. So I think we need to release that pressure off of ourselves to be so
Yeah.
performative and be really honest with ourselves that, yeah, we go through waves of really great moments, really low moments, challenging moments, exciting moments, and know that these emotions that you're experiencing throughout your day, throughout these different events, it's all normal. It's just a matter of, hey, do you know what to do with this? Obviously, like happiness has been a supported emotion throughout
Yeah.
our life. But with anger, frustration, sadness, we've been told that that's not okay to show other people,
Yeah.
right? But that couldn't be any more wrong. That's why it feels hard. It's because we have less practice with how to process it, how to express it, how to deal with it. And so
Yes.
I'm really glad that you're out there helping people realize that, hey, we can practice this. This can be normal to express it in a healthy manner. And you don't have to feel like scared of the next thing that's going to happen and you slip into like the monster mode, right? So, what are insights that you would like to share with the listeners here on how they can let go of mom rage? Because I'm sure everyone that experiences it, they're like, I would love to just erase this part of me.
Yep.
How can
Yeah.
we get rid of this? So, what do you have to share with the listeners who are
Yeah.
desperately trying to just move forward from these experiences?
Yeah. I think the first thing to remember is that if you are experiencing this type of mom rage, that there is hope, that it is not who you are and you are not a monster, and that there are actionable things to work through and process with somebody, that you are not always going to be like that. There's a quote from Daniel Siegel that I love. The brief version of it is that all behavior is communication. And we use it a lot with children, that their behavior is just communicating a need. And it's the same thing for us. And so it's about slowing down and really figuring out, what is my anger telling me? And really shifting the perspective of a bad emotion and a good emotion. And it's really about, what is my emotion trying to tell me right now? All emotions are messengers. And so if we can slow down enough to look at our anger and say, what is this message? What am I needing right now? What am I suppressing? What am I feeling? What are my triggers? Trying to figure out how to track them over a few days. Um, how can you prioritize your basic needs, which I know is really, really hard. But sleep, eating, like, those are going to be the two biggest things that if you are sleep deprived and you have a new baby, like, yeah, you're probably going to experience some more anger. And it's almost like just accepting that emotion for that season of life that you're in. Because I think it's so easy to just want to wish something away. And what we end up doing is stuffing it down, and it does make
Mhm.
it so much worse in the end. Um, and so I think the biggest piece is to start off with starting to notice your body more. This is the biggest thing that I help my clients do, which is when we talk about nervous system regulation, which is, before we even get into like naming our feelings, it's, what is my body feeling right now? So your body is going to be your first indicator that something is going on. And so slowing down to notice. And what I love about this is you can practice this when you're feeling happy and when you're feeling content or when you're feeling silly. Like, it doesn't have to be like anger, frustration, sadness, grief. Like, it doesn't have to be that end of the spectrum. You can do this when you're just like laying in bed and it's like, okay, what am I noticing about my body right now? Because a lot of times what happens when we get triggered and this mom rage comes out is we've kind of skipped all those different steps and we've just gone straight to the reacting, where our body is going to be the very first cue that something is off. And so being able to track how your body feels at different parts of the day or emotions is really, really helpful. So that when you start to clench your jaw, like, okay, let's say for me, I know when I start to get overstimulated, I start to clench my jaw and I kind of like tighten my fists. And so now I know when my body starts to do that, I'm like, okay, I know I'm feeling overstimulated and I have some ideas that I've already created, like I've written down somewhere or I've thought through, of like, these are things that I can do that help me when I'm feeling overstimulated. Um, and so that's really, really helpful to do, of kind of noticing, what does your body feel like with certain emotions, so you can kind of catch yourself a little bit. And it's a practice. It's practicing it throughout the day, every day, of like, okay, what is my body feeling right now? Accepting that it's trying to send you a message, like, okay, what message is this sending me right now? Trying to think of some feelings that you're feeling at that particular moment. And then you can go into, okay, what am I needing right now? Do I need to eat? Do I need to rest? Do I need to go outside? and seeing if you can get your needs met. Because a lot of times we want our children to meet our needs, right? You're being too loud. I need you to be quiet. Or we expect our partner to meet our needs. And really, it's about empowering moms to figure out how to get their own needs met because we are ultimately responsible for that. And so there's a lot of work, obviously, with that of a lot of moms who don't feel like they deserve to get their needs met or they're not important enough. But I think that's a really good starting point is to start noticing your body more when you're starting to get triggered. The minute,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the first thing I work on with my clients as well, because
yeah,
this really translates into your marriage as well, with
yes,
arguments, especially, right?
hmm,
Your body literally is the first sign of something that's coming up. But when you're
yeah,
unaware of what's going on inside your body, it does feel like you go from 0 to 60. But
yes,
really, you're just
yeah,
not paying attention that it
oh,
is ramping up, right? It does
yes,
feel fast, but the thing about this is that once you start to become more aware and start paying attention and really like listening, like scanning through your body on what the sensations are, it's almost like a program. I
yep,
feel anger in this way. So whenever you see those signs or feel those signs, I should say,
mm,
that's your sign of like, oh, shoot,
yep,
I'm starting to feel angry. That's how you slow the process
yep,
down. It's not literally, okay, hit pause on what's happening. You are
yeah,
almost hitting pause on your reaction by noticing more. So I love that you brought that up because that is like the biggest game changer when it comes to how I have transformed as a communicator, as a partner, as a mom, as just a person in general.
yeah,
Just noticing.
yeah,
Noticing is so, so powerful. And so I highly recommend you, if you need to, pause, rewind, re listen to this part because I promise you, the more you're practicing this skill, the more you're
yeah,
going to notice, oh, wow, I am able to speak in a calmer voice for longer, right? We're not
yeah,
going for perfection here, right? We're just
no,
going for progress. We're
yeah,
going for improvement. So whether that's, oh, I took longer to get mad, I um, took longer to yell, I yelled for less time, like all these
yeah,
different markers are things to celebrate, okay? Because this is a sign of you growing and changing your behavior. Even though you're like, oh, but I did yell. Okay,
yeah,
but there's a difference,
yeah.
right?
It's
So,
definitely about celebrating those tiny victories and depending
absolutely.
on what is happening in your current day, okay, what is a goal that, if do you want to yell less, like what is it? I remember when I started doing this practice of noticing my body first and accepting it as a messenger and then naming some feelings and then assessing, what am I needing in that moment. Before I had started that practice, I would have so many days, and I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but like my blood would feel like it was boiling. Like
Oh,
I
yeah,
would
I got
feel
so hot.
so irritable and I would have no idea why. I mean, I remember texting like my sister-in-law, I'm like, I feel like I'm about to explode and I have no
Mhm.
idea why. And it would happen daily where I would just be like, what is wrong? Like, I don't think I'm mad about anything, but I would just feel so irritable and upset. And I was so frustrated because I had no idea why, which meant I couldn't I didn't know what to do with it. And when I started practicing this, what it does is it really helps you to release the emotions that you have throughout the day because that's what's happening is something you're stuck in traffic on the way to somewhere and you get pissed and then you're late for an appointment and then your kid is refusing to get buckled in their car seat and then you're starving and you miss lunch. Like there's all these little things that happen and we're not releasing any of the processing those feelings throughout the day. And so they're just building and building and building and building until we finally explode.
Yep.
And so when you can kind of slow down and check in with yourself throughout the day of like, okay, what am I feeling? What am I needing? And we do that with our kids all the time. Like, do you need to go to the bathroom? Do you need to have a snack? Like, but we're not doing that with ourselves. And you almost like just
Yes.
treat yourself like you're a little child and check in with yourself,
Basically,
what you need. Um, and it helps you kind of release that and let go of some of that feelings throughout the day
yes.
instead of holding on to everything.
Then you're not so much a ticking time bomb.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, love this, love this. Okay, we covered so much, and truly, this episode is like so full of goodness. So, listeners, I highly recommend you listen to this over and over and over again as many times as you need to
Yeah.
really sink in on the level of importance of what Alexis shared so that you can start to experience marriage and motherhood the way you want to, okay? Because you get to be the mom, the wife, and even the woman that you want to feel like. And it all starts with getting to know yourself better, supporting yourself better, and also if you need help reaching out for support, reach out to Alexis, reach out to me. Okay, we're out here ready to help you because we want the best for you. We've done the work on ourselves, we've experienced this firsthand.
Yeah.
So we know it's kind of like one of those things like once you know, you know. We want you on our side. Okay, we want you to
Yes.
know just like we do. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me, Alexis. Before I let you
You too.
go, I would love for you to share where the listeners can connect with you. And also, I
Yeah.
have a fun question at the end.
Okay. So I'm really active on Instagram. You can find me at Thriving Parent Coach. I like to post tips on there and just different ideas to kind of incorporate how to kind of let go of all of those emotions and things like that. And then my website is thrivingparenthood.com. You can check me out there and see how I work with clients. I work one-on-one and I have a group coaching program. So you can kind of check that out and see if you're looking for extra support there.
Amazing. So, yeah, definitely go follow her and reach out. So,
Yeah.
I love to ask guests a question so listeners can get to know you better. Are you ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready. I'm excited to see what it is.
Yeah. So, we talked about generational stuff, right? We talked about mom rage, which is passed down.
Mhm.
What's something that you said you would never do when you became a mom, but you now
Mhm.
do?
Okay. I think for me, honestly, this has been a new thing, so I'll bring it up because I'm just starting to like learn about it a lot more is screen time.
Oh, yeah.
And I feel like there's such a taboo on regulating screen time, which I feel like for the most part, our family still does. Like we have routine times, but I'm learning a lot more that for children that are neurodiverse, screens can be really regulating.
Yes.
And this honestly blew my mind because I feel like
Yes.
there's so much out there that's like, you need to go screen free and screen detox. And I have found with my oldest that there are times where we utilize screens as a tool, and especially in the car, which can be really overstimulating for her. And I have really had to let go of my assumptions of screen time use, especially having a child who is neurodiverse, and just recognizing that like I don't have to hold on to all these like ideals that I thought I was going to do before I became a parent. I just need to help the child that I have in front of me. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I was surprised by that too. For those who are new to me, hi, thanks for being here. I also have two neurodiverse kids. I used to judge myself for giving him the tablet so much. But now it's like, okay, well, as long as I'm intentional about when I'm giving it to him and the reason why, then that's okay. And once I notice that it's actually dysregulating him and the behaviors and cooperation are changing, then okay, then you can kind of learn when is good, when is not so good, and go
yeah.
from there. And I think the biggest thing with having a neurodivergent child, and let me know if you agree with me, is
Mhm.
letting go of comparing your
Yes.
child to the next child.
Yeah.
Like that has been huge
Yeah.
for me. It's like, okay, let's not apply the same rules and same assumptions and same thoughts when really each person is their own self. Like they are an individual with different reactions, needs, and wants. And
Yes.
and while that does make parenting harder,
Mhm.
it does almost make it easier in some other aspects because you're just like, okay, is this working for you or is it not?
Yes. Yeah, I love that. I think it's about being able to individualize how you connect and respond and accommodate different children in your family. And whether you have neurodiverse children or not, they're still going to be very different. They have different
Yeah.
temperaments and personalities and sensory needs, or I mean, you could do a whole other podcast on that.
Oh, yes.
All of our sensory needs being different, whether you're neurodiverse or not. And it's really about looking at the individual child. And it is very easy to get into that comparison game. And it's really just about meeting that individual child's needs, and being
Mm-hmm.
able to figure out how to assess for those needs and meet them and meet your own. And it's just a wonderful world. It's very complex, right? I mean,
Yes, it is. And yeah, it is like it does take extra effort to parent this way rather than, well, this is what I did for your older sibling, so this is what I'm going to do for you. But
yeah,
it does make it easier in a sense because you do form a better connection with them when you
yes,
individualize your parenting. So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think a lot of times your children will show you when something is not working. And
yes.
for
Oh,
us,
yeah.
that became abundantly clear. And that's when it just kind of hits you in the face. And we're just like, this is not working. And you just kind of have to go back to the drawing board, and that's okay. Like, you are learning for the first time as a mom, and there's going to be a lot of trial and error and practicing new things and figuring out what works for you and your individual children and your family as a whole. And that's okay. And it's not going to look perfect the first time. It's not going to ever look perfect.
Right. No,
It's
it's
just about
not.
showing up and trying and preparing with your children every single day if you have to. Like, there are days where I'm
Yes.
like, God, I feel like I've apologized every single day. And I'm like, they will learn that I am human. And the best tool that we can teach any mom out there is the power of repair and connecting with our child and taking ownership for what we've done, especially when it comes to mom rage, which, obviously we didn't get into how that affects our children. A lot of us, we go into our shame spirals of how that affects our children, but repair is the biggest tool, for ourselves and then with our children when something like that happens.
Absolutely. And the best way to really apologize in any kind of relationship, whether it's parent child or a partner and partner or someone else, is to apologize and have that change behavior come after that, right? And so you may feel like you're constantly apologizing, but start doing the work. And then it'll really feel like, okay, I'm
Yeah.
apologizing and I'm backing up my words with action and I'm noticing the difference that it's having. So, yeah,
Yeah.
reach out to
Yeah.
Alexis if you need help with this. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Alexis, for being a part of the show, for
Yeah.
sharing your insights and advice. And I know that so many people are going to listen back to this and be like, oh my gosh, I needed this. So, thank you so
Yeah.
much. And for listeners, thank you for listening all the way to the end. Please leave a review, share this episode with people that you think that this would help, and I'll catch you back here on the next episode. That's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you did, please send me a message over on Instagram at Michelle Perta Coaching to let me know what you loved most about it. Hearing from my listeners is my absolute favorite. And if you've been loving this podcast, please leave a rating and review. This will help people like you find the show and get the help they need. Catch you here on the next episode. Bye.